Well, welcome to our Sterling Hall Roundtable. We're so excited to have you today. I have three fantastic parents and an alum to join us. And let me introduce them. So to start with, we have Shelley, and she has two boys at Sterling, one going into grade 3 and one going into grade 8, ready to graduate at the end of this year. And her boys have been with us since JK and grade 1. They are Jay and Arjun. So welcome, Shelley. Thank you for joining us.
Susie, it's my pleasure.
We also have Nate, and he has a son, Wade, who has just been with us for 2 years, JK and SK. So Wade is really looking forward to a full year of grade 1 with us this year. Welcome, Nate.
Happy to be here.
And finally, we have Jack Jones, who is now at UCC, going into grade 10, and he was with us at Sterling Hall from grade 5, and he still has two brothers at Sterling Hall, and his brother Sam is going to be head boy in grade 8 this year. So welcome, Jack. We're really looking forward to chatting with you today.
Thank you for having me.
So the way it's going to work today is we've got some questions for our panelists, and we're going to start with the parents. And I'll ask a question, and then both parents will answer the question, and we may have some follow-up questions as we go. So we will start off with Shelley. So Shelley, why did you choose the school originally?
I think when I visited the school, we actually lived quite far. We lived in Mississauga at the time, and I had visited a couple of schools. And I remembered an old colleague of mine mentioning Sterling Hall and being very, very happy with the school. So I called the school and went for a visit, even though I knew it was a little far, actually quite far. I visited the school. I was very impressed with the confidence of the teachers, the administration, the passion they had for educating boys. You know, their hands-on learning, the guided reading program, Singapore math groups they described, lots of physical activity, which both my boys need. So I think it was a combination of things, but it really checked off all the things I was looking for in a school. So we did, for the first year, make the trip from Mississauga to Toronto, and then eventually we moved here permanently.
Wow, that's a long trip. So in what ways has the school panned out to be what you expected, and in what ways has it not been what you expected?
So it's interesting. I will have to say that both my boys are very different. They have different strengths, different areas where they need support. And I have been very impressed that the school has really adapted to each boy. And so they have exceeded our expectations in every way. When my boys have needed extension and extra enrichment, they have provided that. When my boys have needed support in areas, they have provided that. You know, in the pandemic, they have adapted and changed to whatever needs of parents and school students have had. So they really have exceeded my expectations in any way. You know, what else could they do? I wish they had a high school. So if you could get them to work on that, Susie, that would be great. Because really,
that's possible, because our boys go to so many different places at the end. We would need, 15 to 20 different schools to meet all the different kinds of boys we have.
Really, they've really exceeded. And again, and I say this, I've been surprised because, as I said, both my boys are very different and have different needs and strengths, but they have really exceeded in every way.
Thank you. What about you, Nate?
Yeah, so in terms of the school, actually one of my friends, our childhood friends growing up, happened to be a former teacher at Sterling. He was a music teacher there, and had nothing but glowing things to say when we had mentioned that we were looking for a school for our son. we have an older daughter in a private school, so that was our first experience. But we weren't really private school people, and very similar to Shelley, we were driving in probably from the furthest east of Scarborough, looking for schools. So yeah, one of the things that really stood out to me during the interview process was the principal himself actually took time that day to meet with us, which is different. So really got to understand not just the school's values, but also where he had seen or is seeing where his vision and the vision of the growth of the school. That really left an impression on us, that the school was very caring of the kids. And what I would say is, in a good way, what I wasn't expecting was just that community-centric vibe of the school. Because as a public school person, you kind of have an opinion of what a private school might be, especially a boys' school, as opposed to my daughter's school. But I didn't get that at all. Felt very welcoming. All the teachers genuinely excited to be there to teach our children. So that was really a big draw for us.
Thank you very much. And has it been what you expected?
Oh, absolutely. Again, echoing what Shelley was saying, I think during the COVID remote learning, that really solidified our choice. The attention that was given to the kids during what's very difficult to teach. My son was only 5 at the time, to keep their attention and also to follow up, I think is very important. So even though we were disconnected, being able to message the teachers even instantaneously and get a response or even a change in the learning based on my son's needs, that's pretty impressive.
Thank you very much. Okay, so Nate, we'll start with you this time. What's the biggest impact the school has had on Wade?
Wade was kind of a shy kid. I know it's weird to say for like a 3.5 or 4-year-old at the time, but one of the big things we were looking for was just him coming out of his shell and having an environment to foster his personality. And we've definitely seen that. He's super confident, wanting to go to school. The Sterling Star program is a really good kind of a way for all the kids to recognize a form of achievement in themselves across so many different areas. So you're not really pigeonholed into being one type of person. And I think that's as a 4 and a 5-year-old kid, that's important to get reinforcement that what you're doing is good, and to continue to do that. And when I see him come home and say, oh, I got a star for leadership, I'm kind of surprised. So I think that's telling of what the school is able to do for him, given where he was when he started.
Okay, thank you. Shelley, do you want to take on that question?
Yeah, I mean, I echo what Nate has said in so many ways. In terms of the Sterling Star program, it has been amazing for my youngest, who's started in JK, so went through that whole program for a few years. Just his desire to earn, and I love that they are based on character strength. So same, he would come home, joy of learning, and explain that, or perseverance, and really it's those types of skills that determine long-term success. And so that was really, really important for him. The lunches at the end of it, if you earned a certain number of stars, the lunches with Mr. Parsons was like what he lived for. So they have a really unique way of building that confidence in the kids from a young age. For my eldest, I would say it's just just when you have such a supportive community of teachers who really want you to do well and cheer for you, and same thing with the parents, um, that just naturally builds a lot of confidence. And so, as you know, both my children are very different. Um, One is, a little bit more athletically inclined, the other is not. And I remember a story years ago when we were having in-person sports games. This is the son who's not very athletically inclined, and he's working on and getting much better. But he was just starting out in basketball, and he was working on it and hadn't made a lot of scores. And I remember I had left the room, and when I came back, he had scored, and it was almost like he wasn't my child. The parent community was just up screaming, so happy for him. And that really builds confidence like nothing else, that you have a whole community rooting for you.
Thank you. I just got goosebumps thinking about that. So nice. All right, so Shelley, we'll start this one with you. What do Jay and Arjun say about the school to you when they talk to you about it?
Quite a lot of things. And I actually, asked them about this before this, like, what are your thoughts? Because it's always interesting to hear. We, as parents, we have our view of what we want, but what's important to them. I think, so Arjun, of course, would just say, his teachers. He's had, now it's been 4 years, he's had incredible teachers with whom he's formed really amazing bonds. And I think it's hard to say this, but I do think it's true. So much of having an amazing staff of teachers has to do with great leadership, administration. And I think Sterling definitely, at least in my experience, and I'm going into my 8th year, has a way of recruiting amazing teachers, developing amazing teachers, and just retaining amazing teachers. So I think really it's the teachers that form a big part of the kids' experience. I would say great teachers. And of course, given he's so little, he loves his friends. And we also pick great families and great boys. I think for Jay, he loves all the extracurriculars, all the great clubs, and that's a big part of his experience. He's loved unfortunately, they haven't been around for the last year or two, but all the great overnight experiences and all the hands-on learning, he really loves that. And of course, just you have a community and culture of kindness, of respect and inclusivity, diversity. And I think all of that just make the kids feel like they belong and very, very comfortable.
Thank you. Nate, do you want to add on to that? What does Wade say as a little senior kindergartner going into grade 1?
Yeah, I was going to say, when I was 4 or 5, I just kind of talked about what games I played and what friends I made, and that hasn't changed. I think what's different is that when he talks about what he's learned, it's at such a high level of what I did when I was 4 or 5. I probably came home and doodled with Crayola or made my name out of macaroni, and that was it. He's, I get the technology is different, but it's not just that. It's the complexity of what he's learning, both from academic perspective, but also from a character perspective. Social emotional learning is something that wasn't around when I was in school, but super important, and definitely seeing the positive effects on Wade. He talks about overcoming things, and that's crazy to think about with the 5-year-old because you're still developing, but he knows how to address certain situations that, quite frankly, adults probably today still struggle with. So I think the fact that he can talk about that as part of his everyday school experience, like it isn't anything special, that's pretty neat.
Thank you. So now Oh, go ahead, Shelley.
I just got excited hearing Nate speak, and I would love to share an example, which again, Nate, I echo that I'm really surprised. So at the end of last year, so Arjun was in grade 2, 7-year-old, just hearing him talk about Pride Week, hearing him talk about all of the First Nations issues that we've all been working through over the last few months. And you know, I was not educated on the Native Indians and all of the issues that they face when I was going through school here in Toronto. But the way Arjun can speak about it as a 7-year-old so eloquently just shocked me. And it really also shows that the confidence that the teachers give to these little kids, that they really believe that they're ready to learn and speak and discuss and understand these topics, and they really are.
Thank you. I'm going to put Jack on the spot here for a second and just move over and say, Jack, as you listen to these two parents talk, do you feel like you're nodding in your head going, yeah, I do feel like I am given I was given the confidence to do that. And they gave me the skills. Like when you, in grade 9, do you feel like when you were thrown into a group for cooperative work, do you feel like you were super well prepared to deal with issues and conflict? And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I feel like now when I get put into a group at UCC, like last year, I'd get put into groups and I'd never met the people before, but Sterling provided me with good collaboration skills and leadership skills, so I could go into an activity with people I'd never met them before, and I bonded with them right away, or maybe not even bonded, but just had the capability to lead a group or follow along.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to move on to a bit of a tricky question. If Sterling Hall could be represented as a single person and it had a personality, what 3 personality traits would this single person have? And you're only allowed to use 3 words. So I think, Nate, you're up first.
Gotta cheat a little and use a hyphen. But it's definitely confident, character-driven leader. And I don't just mean that in like an aggressive type of way. It's more from a caring culture perspective. I see that across the school, not just in the students, but at the teachers, the administration. Just the fact that you can walk into the building, and I know it's not a big school, but most of the teachers and the principal, they know who you are. They know who your kid is. That doesn't happen in public school. It's not a knock on that. It's just that extra level of community. So when you see that and you see that your kids are being raised that way, that's what I see in my now 6-year-old. He's confident. He knows through the Sterling Star program all the character traits that make for just a good person. And whether he becomes a leader or not, it's not that important. It's just that he has that. He has the tools and has been taught how to deal with so many different things at such a young age that I'm personally confident that he can do whatever he wants to do.
Great. All right, Shelley, your 3.
So the first one would be positive. Almost every teacher meeting I have had, and it's not always been, there's been some bumps, like with any child. I think with both my children, there's always been bumps, but every single meeting I've had at schools always started off positive. So I would describe as a person, it would be a very positive person. Very kind and empathetic. So I'm going to use a hyphen as well, kind, empathetic, and lots of, I think the staff, the leaders, everyone leads with kindness. and you feel that in the community of the school. And I think the last would be curious. And when I say curious, I mean curious in the sense of always wanting to do better. And I noticed that with especially Rick Parsons, or the principal and leader of the school, he's always curious to how can we do better? How can we do things differently? How can we learn about different things? And curious in terms of different learning strategies, curious in terms of also very open to learning about different cultures. I love the celebrations we have at assemblies of all different faiths. That's wonderful. And I think it's also developing that curiosity in our children for all different things. So yeah, those would be my three: positive, kind, and curious.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so our last question for the parents. How would you describe the values of the school and the values of the families in our school community? And Shelley, we'll start with you this time.
Sure. I mean, I think the school very much leads with their values. The character and the community is very, very important. And I want to say that they, as some parents who may be watching, or children that, applying to the school or whatnot, that family fit is very important. And I have experienced, I already described the example of parents cheering for my child who wasn't the star basketball player, but also just, I'll share an example that shows what the community is about. When my son first started at the school, I remember early on him having a pretty bad altercation with another child. And the mother, who had been at the school for some time, so I felt like she was a veteran Sterling parent and I was just getting started, she called and she said, okay, we're going to have a play date for a couple hours. These kids have to figure it out. And she drove all the way out to Mississauga for her son to have a play date. And I think that speaks volumes for the kind of community it is. It's not like, why did your child do this? It's like, hey, we're raising these kids together. We have to teach them to be better. And I've experienced that sentiment for the last 7 years. So I think that I hope that example shares the kind of values the school has, and I think that the parent community has.
Thank you. Nate, do you want to continue on from there?
Yeah, from a family perspective, while it's been difficult the last couple years, just a couple families reaching out to either have, back when we had in-person play dates, or even we've set up a couple virtual ones for Wade. And especially they're coming from families that have multiple kids. So the veterans, if you will. And it shows a couple things. It shows that they're invested enough in the school, they're sending multiple children through, but also they know what it's like to be new. So they kind of take it upon themselves to reach out and make sure that the parents and also the kids feel included. So I think that's been very strong. From a learning perspective, also, one of the advantages is that if your child has interest in different things, or really likes or even excels in certain things, that they can tailor certain things for that child. It's, for example, Wade really likes numbers. So to the point where even I'm impressed how he even got those things happening in his head. But the school recognized that and, challenged him with different assignments or different puzzles and things like that, because, they recognize, hey, he's bored because he knows what he's learning. So let's up our game a little bit, and they can do that on the fly. So I think just supporting that learning value is showing early on already in Wade's short time there.
Okay, well, thank you so much. we are going to move on to our alumni right now and have a little chat with Jack, and then we'll pull it all together at the end. Thank you for being so patient, Jack. Okay, so Jack, what did you appreciate most about the school during your time there? And how has your perspective on that changed now that you've been away from the school for a year?
Yeah, so like when I look back on my time at Sterling, I really appreciate how the teachers went out of their way to make sure my experience was the best at that school and with every other boy. Like when I first came to Sterling, I was not like my academics weren't there. I felt very behind because I came from public school and I came in grade 5, whereas like I had never taken French before. Math was not very good for me. And teachers went out of their way. They told me to come in early in the morning for extra help. They sat down with me and they explained everything to me. And the one thing that really stood out to me was getting like a piece of writing back or like a math test back. There was always feedback, and the feedback was perfect. Like it was very helpful. It was very detailed. You knew exactly where you went wrong and how you could improve. And that to me was a big part of taking my work to the next level in order to improve. And I think all around, just like the student teacher connections and the student connections were very like that like is probably my highlight of my time at Sterling.
Yeah, that makes a really big difference, those student teacher connections.
Yeah.
So to the best of your knowledge, what most differentiates Sterling Hall from other schools?
Am I allowed to go back to the student teacher connections, or would you like a different answer?
Well, you can say if that's the highlight, and then maybe tell us something else as well.
Yeah, so I think another thing that differentiates the school from other schools is the trips that we go on, which really push some kids out of their comfort zones. And for example, me, I went to Temagami in grade 8, and I'm not good with being away from home, or at least I wasn't. And Temagami was a canoe trip, an 8-day canoe trip, and that's not my thing. Like I've never been camping before, not something I was looking forward to. But I went there with Mr. Allen, a teacher who just retired, and he was amazing. The first night I went there and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna hate this. It's terrible. And Mr. Allen was there guiding me along the whole trip, and we bonded on that trip. Like to me, like that was just amazing for me, because I know like now I'm gonna remember that for the rest of my life, like the Temagami trip with Mr. Allen. Yeah.
So again, it's that teacher connection there. So it wasn't actually the trip, it was the teacher that made it for you.
Right, exactly. And it's just amazing to me how much they try, how much work they put into ensuring your like peer has a great time at the school.
Can you think of what was Mr. Allen doing that made it possible for you to be successful on that trip?
Basically just ensuring my confidence and just telling me like I could do it. And at the end, I was going to be proud of myself, and I was going to look back on it for the rest of my life and say like, oh my gosh, I did that. And I think that's like a big motive for lots of boys, the accomplishment, and just looking back on that and knowing that that's going to stick with them forever.
So the teachers having faith in your abilities when you feel like you lack them.
Right.
That's great. So if you could change something about the school for the better, what might you change?
When I went to Sterling, it kind of checked off all the boxes for me. I didn't have any complaints, and I still don't have any complaints about it. Maybe if I'd like to see a high school, just like Shelley said. Fun.
Yes. Yeah. I'm with you, Jack. Let's make it happen.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys. Maybe change of location, Shelley?
Well, we're in Toronto now, so we're here. It was a big move, but we made it.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you think, Jack, families would find most surprising about the school?
I think families would find most surprising. I think it would be the how the school's so welcoming. Like Nate said, it's not like a stereotypical boys' school that you would think of in public school. Like when I came into the school, every student and every teacher made sure that I felt welcomed, felt like they made me fit in. It's almost like I didn't have a choice. Like I made friends. I was making friends from left and right, and I went in there so nervous, like really nervous, seeing like that everyone had almost already bonded and there was no room for me, but they made it happen, and that to me was very important.
Can you put your finger on how they made that happen? Can you think, was there anything special that made that happen when you look back?
Well, I remember New Boys Day was pretty amazing, and that was like one day as in the life of Sterling Hall before your first year started, and that was like a good chance to start to get to know some of the boys and have a feel for the school. That way you were kind of prepared, and that was nice. That was very helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to students that are just entering the school?
I would say without a doubt, take any opportunity that comes your way. Don't hesitate, just take it, because so much is going to come out of it. You're going to become a better person. You're going to be able to build yourself to someone you never thought you would have been. And to me, that's amazing. Like there's a trip to Ecuador in grade. I'm not sure if they're still going to do this, but grade 7, if you're in grade 7 or 8, you go to Ecuador on a Meet a Wee trip, and I know Meet a Wee is not still around, but if they still find a way to do that, we went and we helped build schools. We got to experience a different culture, meet different communities, and to me that was life-changing. Like just seeing how some other people live and how fortunate I am.
Did you try any new clubs that you hadn't anticipated Jack Jones kind of being a part of?
Yes, I did.
Can you give us any examples?
I tried a lot of like language clubs and like subject clubs to try and improve my academics, and I found that was very helpful, even though it wasn't like my thing. Like I'd go with my friends, I'd have fun, and at the end I would ultimately improve, which was good to see.
So thank you. I have a couple of questions to throw out to all of you. Often I hear, oh, well, if Sterling does so much welcoming and caring about boys, do they coddle too much? How do you balance at Sterling the caring with challenging and pushing boys?
So I will go first because if you don't, because I've had so many experiences to show me that they do not coddle. I would say both my boys at times have needed firmness. And we have always used the approach to encourage our teachers such that we're a team. And, you know, if the boys need some firmness, we encourage them to give that. And yeah, they've used that. But I think when you're building, one of the things the school and Rick Parsons talks quite a bit about is you only get that higher level learning happening when you have a relationship with the child. And so if you start to be firm with a child when you haven't built that relationship where they're comfortable with you, where they look up to you, then when they're going to be firm with you, that's not going to really achieve anything. And so I think they lead with that. They lead with that kindness and that welcoming and making sure the kids feel like they belong and they're comfortable. But when needed, there is firmness, and also absolutely a challenge. So As Nate was saying, so, my eldest, his math is very strong, and he's always been put in groups where he can be challenged at math. And so that challenge is there. There's no coddling, like pushing them. And I have seen the curriculum. They've just finished grade 7. We've just seen the grade 7 curriculum. We've been very, very impressed with the level the boys are learning at. The math, for sure, I can say, is at least 1, if not 2 grades ahead. And same thing with the sort of the science and the language that they're doing. These boys are being pushed quite a bit.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything to add there?
I could just say something quick. I mean, obviously Wade's a bit younger, but I think the remote learning and being home sometimes when he's doing remote learning would tell you they're not coddling the kids, because it would be very easy just for them to disappear off the screen. And then just say, okay, well, that's one of X number of boys, whatever, I'll just keep going on. Nope. You can hear it, Wade, now's not the time to sprawl out and lie on your bed or whatever it might be. I know it's difficult, right? Some people learn obviously better, most people in a group environment, but they're still able to convey the message to even young 4 and 5-year-olds to say, hey, there's a right and wrong and there's an expectation. So I think that's important at a young age, but yeah, the positive or growth part of it, like I mentioned before, is they can be put in separate groups and really challenge themselves to push further. And really, I see it in the child. They end up determining kind of how far they push actually the teacher back. So that's nice to see.
And Jack, did you feel like you were challenged?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I think one of the biggest differences I notice in myself is my independence, my level of independence, and I think that comes from pushing myself out of my comfort zone, and not, like, there was definitely still a level of guidance, but it wasn't to an extent where I wasn't learning anything new. And I think once you're pushed out of your comfort zone, that's when you're really going to learn.
All right. And my last question is, we're a K-8 school. How or in what ways is there interaction between the younger boys and the bigger boys? And Jack, you would be able to comment because you were only there from 5 to 8. So what kind of mentorship, leadership did you provide for the school? And then Nate, you might say, well, we've seen older boys in this sense. And Shelley, you have both perspectives. So I'll open it up, and anybody is open to start.
I can start.
Okay, great, Jack.
So a big thing for me was student council as like a grade 5 and a grade 8. And in grade 8, since I was head boy, I actually got a chance to run the student council and also see little kids run it in K. And that was very impressive to me to see that JKs and SKs had the potential to run a meeting seriously. And that to me was like, grades were able to bond there. Like JKs and SKs were able to meet grade 5s and grade 8s and then say hi to them in the halls and feel like they were part of a community and part of the school, which was really nice to see. And then of course there's buddies and all that stuff.
And how do the buddies work, Jack?
Buddies grade 8s are paired up normally with the SKs and JKs, and then 7s with 1s and so on. And that is another way where the JKs and SKs really feel like they're part of the school, because I feel like when you're that age, like, you really want to be recognized by the older boys. I know I did, at least. And that's really important in feeling included.
And what kinds of things do buddies do?
We do a lot of activities like playtime, but then also reading and helping them out with some of their schoolwork. And and just like playing with them outside before school starts.
Okay, thank you. Shelley or Nate, do you want to add on?
Yeah, I can follow up on that because yeah, Wade was able to go through the buddy program. I thought that was really neat that I have this friend, who is that? Oh, he's in grade 8. Like, okay. So similar to what Jack said, you go to school and I think there's an apprehension to say, oh, the older boys, they're much bigger, and if they notice me, maybe it'll be in a negative way. But I think that inclusion for the school, you have that feeling, and really that all grades and all ages are really part of one big family. So they look out for each other. Sometimes the before and after school programs can be difficult, especially I know when we first got there, it was, oh, Wade's just going to be thrown outside, 7:30 in the morning and just left to fend for themselves. But you see that the older kids, help them out, and then they're ending up hanging out together in the after school program. So just because they're in a specific grade, they're able to see other kids. And then of course they're in different houses. So when they have house events, they recognize, oh, they're part of this house, and they're able to bond that way too.
Thank you. Shelley?
Yeah, no, something that comes to mind, and Jack, you can tell me if I'm saying it right or not. Mr. Parsons always says, big boys look after themselves and bigger boys look after each other, something like that, Jack. Is that right?
Look out for others, yeah.
Yeah, and I think I've heard my boys say that saying quite a bit, and I think that's definitely part of the culture and the interaction between the different grades. I think as my boys have got older, they've loved to kind of mentor the younger ones. And when they were young, like Nate said, especially my little guy just loved the interaction with the older boys, and it meant so much to them. And so I feel like actually at each level, the boys are growing. Even at the grade 2, grade 3 level, they're being told they still have an opportunity to help the younger kids. I remember when there was a little bit of when Arjun was told that he's now the oldest in the recess group. And so therefore he has to be the bigger boy looking after other boys. And even at whatever it was, grade 1 or 2, he felt that responsibility and was talking about it, that at recess, now I have to look out for others. And that's really built into their thinking and their curriculum. And it's so amazing to see. And of course, I think the houses make up such a big part of their experience throughout the years. And my favorite event is seeing We Are Plum Pirates, seeing the excitement at the Terry Fox run and all the interaction they have with the older boys is always amazing.
All right. Well, any final words from anybody about Sterling Hall?
I would just like to say that, if you're considering a school for your boy, I don't think there's a better school in Toronto. And I say that because I have done extensive research, and regardless of who your child is and what their needs are, I think the school really steps up to and meets your child where they are and helps develop them and helps each boy kind of get to their full potential. So, and I'm typically, I can be a very critical person, but really the school has exceeded my expectations. And if you have any specific questions, I'm sure Susie will tell you that there's a whole community of parents who'd be willing to speak to you.
That is very true. Yeah, well, thank you so much, Jack and Nate and Shelley. I so appreciate your time. And yeah, thank you for chatting about Sterling Hall today.
Thank you for
having
having me.
Take care.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.